Hello and welcome to the Primary PE Huddle podcast, brought to you by Aspire Active Education. Aspire Active Education is a passionate family who all believe that PE, sport and physical activity are essential for children to develop a love of healthy living and to end physical inactivity forever. We've proven that working in collaboration with school leadership teams, PE subject leaders, teachers and all PE practitioners positively impacts the sustainability of schools embedding a powerful physical curriculum and essentially helps more children be more active more often. Our mission is to engage 1 million children in physical activity by 2025, and we hope this podcast brings others along our journey with us. Through this podcast series, we aim to discover the power behind PE, school sport and physical activity, specifically in primary schools, the impact this has on the whole school, the impact it has on pupils' holistic development, and the secrets behind the successful implementation of a powerful physical curriculum. This is what makes up the Primary PE Huddle. We won't be alone through this journey. We're joined by PE subject leaders, school and academy senior leadership teams, experts in the field of primary education, and representatives of key sector bodies who all share what physical activity means to them, how they use it as a tool to positively impact children and young people, and what they believe in the Primary PE Huddle. Our guests perform a deep dive on topics such as creating sustainable high quality PE, the benefits of physical activity, a top-down collaboration to embed a physically active ethos, and sharing of best practice from their own experiences to create an enthusiastic culture towards a healthy and active lifestyle. If you like what you hear, please leave us a review and subscribe wherever you get your pods.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Primary PE Huddle. We've got a fantastic guest with us today. We've got Natalie Weir. I'm going to let Natalie introduce herself in just a moment. Natalie comes from a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to hear a bit about her studies as well, and give us some really in-depth knowledge. So there's going to be loads of gems to take.
So for the last 15 years working in kind of national governing body of sport world. So I've spent 12 years working with British Orienteering, in a variety of roles, from kind of sport development to being on the senior leadership team. And more recently, I'm also Chief Playmaker / mum to a 2 and 5-year-old. And as COVID hit, this coincided with my now 5-year-old taking her first steps. And all of my work up to this point has been aged 5+. But I started becoming really aware of the lack of understanding and response to physical activity levels in under 5s. So now I'm pursuing a PhD at the University of Derby, looking at that relationship in movement and physical literacy in 3 to 5-year-olds, because I think it's so important that we can go as early as possible to try and kind of empower and get our young people moving as much as they can.
Absolutely. And I think that they're the building blocks, aren't they, Natalie? They're the building blocks that if we get it right at that stage, when these children go into their educational and physical development journey through primary school.
So if we don't instill that love and joy of movement and facilitate it and grow it as much as we can, then it's a harder job the later we get on. It was things like obesity and, already 1 in 4 young people that start primary school in the UK are categorised as overweight and obese. So that's age 4 and 5. So that's got significant implications. And obviously there's a lot of pieces of the jigsaw that make up a young person's health, mental and physical. But physical activity and movement is an integral part of that. So that's kind of where my steer is, where I'm passionate about, and where I think a lot of us can make a difference. Those of us that work with young people, especially education.
Absolutely. And I think you're definitely on the right podcast to talk about this, which is exciting. So, you mentioned the stat there, and I can tell you're eager to get into it. So I'll tell you what, to give us a bit of a scope of what you've been looking into, can you just kick us off by telling us a bit more?
There's a lack of understanding and research, particularly in the movement behaviours of under 5s. And, there's all those scary statistics, such as over 50% more young people are being treated for preventable illnesses like type 2 diabetes. So my research is to try and plug some of those gaps. We need to know more, show more, and move more. So my research is going to quantify and map out actually where and how little people are being active across the day. So for under fives, they've got to move 180 minutes each day, with about 60 minutes being moderate to vigorous. We don't really know how and if and where and when our young people are meeting. Are they meeting? Research shows us that they're not meeting that. So less than 10% under fives are meeting the activity levels. And it's the same in primary school. Young people just aren't moving enough. So what my research is going to look at is we're actually going to go in, we're going to quantify physical activity levels, and we're going to quantify some physical literacy measures. Physical literacy, for those that are new to the term, is just basically a holistic way of looking at how we're active. It is our relationship with being active. So it's not just about how we move, but it's about how we think and feel and connect with movement. So how we feel when we're doing it, what relationships we're nurturing while we're moving, what happens in our brain when we're moving, all those sexy things that are happening other than just developing motor skills. So my work is just basically here to say, hello, we have to think about things other than motor skills. We have to think about outcomes from PE lessons or physical development sessions outside of just fundamental movement skills or making the next elite sports person. Obviously, that's great if we are facilitating that and we are, creating fit, active people that are likely to be the next sports people. But primarily, every child deserves the opportunity to have a joy and love of movement. Every child, we want them to be fit and healthy, both physically and mentally, both now and into the future. Because otherwise, us as UK taxpayers will be paying for it in 20 years. We're literally talking 10 billion by 2050 just on obesity related conditions alone. So if that doesn't scare you into kind of, even if you as a person have not necessarily got the healthiest relationship with movement. So everyone, if they're listening to this podcast, I challenge you to think back to some of your early experiences of being active, whether that was in primary school, whether that was making mud pies in your garden, whether that was being part of a structured sports club. You will have positive and negative experiences of when you're active. Everyone's got those stories of what they did or didn't like. And PE and education has an important part on a person's journey with those experiences. And just like, our relationships that we've got to nurture with our mum or our sister, or in my case, my husband, sometimes we have to work on these relationships. And us as adults, we have to work on them. We have to think, what we're doing. And I think that's just what I guess I'm here to do, is understand that a bit more and then connect some of the theory and research to what, all the teachers who are doing a fabulous job out there and have got so many conflicting challenges in terms of curriculum pressures and all the things, the outputs they've got to deliver. Why and how should movement and physical literacy be up there? So that's essentially some of the key messages I'm researching and trying to share.
No, it's a fantastic thing to look into and research. And there's a saying that we love to use, and that's if physical activity were a pill, doctors would be rushing to prescribe it. If it was something that was quick and easy, if it was a case of I've got a headache, or I've got conjunctivitis or whatever it is, it's a case of take these for a week and you'll be sorted and that'll negate it. And we always, we say if that was a thing, people would be rushing for it because of the benefits that physical activity has on all health, like you said, not just physical but the mental as well, well-being side of things. Something that drives us is, and our main mission is to end physical inactivity forever. So we like it to be almost unaccomplishable, unobtainable, but we want to drive towards it. And we see the foundation being, if we can instill that love and physical activity becomes habitual from a young age, like you said, before the age of 7, and that carries on through not just their educational journey, but through their whole lifestyles. They don't have to become an elite athlete, but if their life, whichever route they take, has physical activity encompassed within it, it's going to make people happier, healthier, they're the byproduct advantages, like you said, about taxpayers' money and 10 billion in the NHS, which I completely agree
The
with.
thing is, Daniel, quality of our relationship with movement and physical activity will profoundly influence our choice to be active. So the earlier we can get those values, the easier it will be, because it's harder to instill. Like I said, those personalities and values are set when you're a young person. And that's why it's so important. Obviously, we can intervene at older ages, and that's absolutely vital as well. But it will make the futures easier if we can, whether you're a parent, an educator, a leader, a policymaker, if you understand that relationship between movement and learning, if you understand that relationship with movement and joy and mental health, if you can connect those dots better, if the Department of Education can better talk to the Department of Health, if we don't have a curriculum that forces us to, academicize, that's not a word, you know what I mean? My 5-year-old, I honestly couldn't give her monkeys at what point she can read and write and say "t" and "the" and whatever. What I care about is how active she's been that day. Has she been outside to play? How is she engaged with movement? Has she had fun? And obviously, I know as they get older in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, there's going to be more integration of sit-down learning, and absolutely that is hugely valuable. But we have to reframe the way we teach. The population and the young children we are teaching today are not the same as what they were 20 years ago. They are more disconnected, more sedentary. We've got more mental and physical health, like I said, preventable illnesses. We cannot follow the same curriculums, the same methodologies that we did then. And therefore, teaching and education, whilst there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle in getting our young people healthy, such as the community, such as the culture someone is brought up in, such as the role models they've got around them. Education is so primarily positioned. You've got our young people, you've got our precious young people for so many hours a day. Me as a parent personally, I want to know what you're doing with them. I want to know I want to hear more about the physicalness and obviously that's not the case for a large proportion of the population. Let's be honest, a lot of our adults are inactive. A lot of our adults are not role modeling those positive movement and joy and movement behaviors that we need. So I think it's just about challenging us personally to think about our own relationship, our own physical literacy position. Because as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson said, small steps lead to big results. So what even in our own lives, what steps can we take? Someone said to me, Dan, it must be really annoying not having a car for the school run. I was like, excuse me, I've got a car. I just choose to walk my child to school every day, even if it's like cold and snowy. And it's just, how is that strange, lad?
Yeah, it's the perceptions, isn't it? And it's, the thing is, it's a sweeping statement, but clearly it can become generational. And like you said, in regards to how they disconnected and so on. And interestingly, I was at a governor's meeting last night, the governor for a local primary school. And one thing that we're looking at in the schools driving towards is a new build school. They've got up to year 1 at the moment, currently. And what they're doing is continuous learning in year 1. So taking that from early years and taking it into Key Stage 1. And the impact it's having is we're only now, midway through the year, but the impact it's having on general learning, on reading, on writing, math, and everything. It's having an impact. It's clear to see there. And what we're doing is benchmarking with other schools and working with other schools who are looking at doing similar things, working with schools who haven't done it yet, but want to see, go into their to come into our school. We're already discussing the fact that when we looked at this, we decided it was going to be a year 1 thing. We were going to see if we can do it into year 1 thing. Partway through the year, we're already looking at year 2. Can we actually, is it realistic to continue more continuous learning into year 2, which enables more physical activity?
So what do you mean by, we're going to take in early years principles into feel up.
Sure. No, so the continuous learning side of things, it's a case of that enables more flow in the classroom where it's not necessarily sat at a desk looking at the screen, looking at the whiteboard. You can have active and passive learning. And again, most of our listeners will be aware of active and passive learning, but just to recap, you can have active learning whilst and that's more actively problem solving. But this is about different learning activities and tasks set up around the classroom, and the children being able to move between those learning activities and choose those learning activities, and this is like continuous learning. And it's not something that's reserved for early years. However, we're experimenting with bringing it into Key Stage 1, and it's had a fantastic impact so far through year 1 to the point where other schools want to see it, where Mods Academy Trust want to look at how they could potentially implement it. And we're already discussing as a governing board with the head teacher, is this something that we can actually realistically continue into year 2 as well? And in looking at what they're doing in Scandinavia, for example, where early years doesn't actually finish till the age of 7. And I know I've spoken about this on a different podcast with Helen Batterley as well, and she's really passionate and driving this. But seeing it firsthand in the school where I'm a governor and seeing the impact, there's always that obstacle of, well, what about their reading, writing, and math? He's going to have it. We need to sit them down, and that's become the mindset. So what we need to do collectively is combat that mindset, but not in a, it's not the wrong word because we don't want it to be combated, but evidence actually the impact on learning as well.
Currently, you have conflicting priorities, but you've got outcomes to achieve in whether it's phonics, maths, whatever your curriculum or whatever age and stage you're teaching your children at. Physical development outcomes generally tend to be fundamental movement skill based. And as you get a bit older, it does, we are talking about knowledge and learning and application to sports, etc. But physical literacy opens the door for us to appreciate that it's how we feel, connect and think as well as move, which can be applicable to subjects other than just movement. But also it enables us to be not more relaxed, but enables us to then take the pressure off. For example, some recent sport coaches that I was talking to, how they'd see a session as a failure if the kids weren't engaging with the whatever motor skill they were trying to develop at that point. So I think it was kicking they were talking about. They just weren't interested. They weren't engaged. The coach was like, oh, this is a really rubbish session. It's like, well, if you'd reframed that and actually, changed it to the fact how you can make it, how they're connecting, how they're talking to each other. Are they still having fun? Because obviously the motor skill outcome is so important and we've got to develop those kind of things. Actually, it's responding to those young people, not just going forward like at breakneck speed, delivering that session in that way, because that's the outcome you had for that session initially. Yeah.
And that, like you said, it's that the outcome expectations. I mean, it stems from the top down, the top being government, and the expectations they're put on school. So, with that being said, with regards to physical education lessons, so PE lessons, we've got to look at the positives with regards to how they're interacting with it and the experience and their level of being physically active. But what importance do you then put on physical education, so PE lessons within schools? So I know the main thing we're looking at here is the physical literacy, physical activity opportunities for children. But what importance do you put on physical education?
Serves as kind of creating those foundational pillars for the development in a whole range of, holistic sportiness, which enhances the physical health, emotional well-being, also that knowledge and understanding. And I think the turning point with understanding how important PE and school sport is was really hammered home when I had children of my own. And I know it's like really cheesy to say that, my own children are just my own. Well, other than the fact that I still haven't had a full night's sleep in about 5 years. that realization that PE that they're going to get is some of their earliest opportunities to learn, be active, understand why we're being active. It's so important. And a lot of the stuff I did from a British Orienteering whilst working for, national governing body of sport was all about those positive first experience. If you ask someone to talk to you about their earliest experiences of PE, they'll, I can tell you, Bob will be able to tell you, Jenny will be able to tell you, you might anecdote the funny time about when you had to run around, doing orienteering in a dark, cold, wet field and getting lost, or whatever it may be, whatever those experiences may be. Those positive or negative experience a child has in PE in school is vital. It will stay with them. It will shape them. The job that you do as a PE teacher, a PE leader, someone that advocates for movement is so important, not just for now, but for the future. And it's what I said about, from seeing it from that parental perspective was, I'd rather my child be fit, healthy and active when they're 50 rather than be, a sedentary person who's really clever because they can read. And I don't know. It's just putting it in application to a person. And you as a PE teacher, you do such a fantastic job already, but it's just really emphasizing your job outside of PE. So I used to have a challenge when I worked with orienteering, when I had products and programs that I might be saying to primary schools, here you go, here's a nice product. And they go, okay, here's my PE lead. I go, hang on a minute, I don't want to talk to your PE lead. I want to talk to your geography teacher or your maths teacher about doing the sessions in other lessons. So I think we've also got a responsibility as PE teachers or people that are advocates for being active to not just think about the quality and what we're delivering in our own PE lessons, but how we can take those key messages to the others. How we can take our successes or what we're doing and the importance of what we're doing to our senior leadership team. How can we share it with with other schools? How can we make sure that there's enough CPD and training, there's time and pressures on, PE teachers and staff, on primary, the primary education industry as a whole, the same with early years. There's a lot of challenges in terms of workforce, money. But
I was gonna say, because with that, because I completely agree with everything you say. We may have some listeners, and you've already noted it with some of the obstacles. But while you are doing your research, what do you see as the main obstacles? It might be going to school, it might be personal, it might be something above schools, as it were, such as governing bodies and the government. What do you see as the main obstacles to schools implementing not just a good PE curriculum, but
that's a good question. And helpfully, when I asked in some of my recent research, so I've done a lot of recent focus group interviews with all manner of people, from people that directly teach, from parents to policymakers, to try and get that understanding of what are the main challenges. Even, there were sports coaches in there. There was, school sport partnership deliverers in there. And because it was specifically related to the early years, which is slightly different to, primary school age. The early years doesn't have a PE curriculum as such. Settings are generally free to determine their own. But some of the obstacles are the same for primary as they are for early years, one of which is always going to be what we've mentioned before. So they're competing academic priorities. Lack of training and resources in confidence is another big one. So from a practitioner level itself, we've talked about there are plenty of humans and adults in our lovely society that are not active enough themselves. So, and we're expecting them to then go in and teach and value. But if they don't do that themselves, then how can we expect them to role model those behaviours? So that is a significant challenge. And some of those surprising outcomes or successes that has come from some of the research or some of the interventions has been actually the understanding on the adult or the teacher to look and think about their own relationship with movement and about maybe what changes they can make to see the positive impact in their lives before we can suddenly expect them to positively role model those things. I can turn up at a sports day for my little one and the teacher will go, right, it's time for the parents to be involved. And they'll all go, well, And then I'll go, come on, let's go.
What's
You have to look at the adults, and that's one of the challenges. It's all well and good having schemes or having curriculums or having suggested interventions. If that person doesn't necessarily value, similarly, one of the other obstacles, which is, it can be a challenge, but it can also be a positive, are things like the senior leadership team you've got in place. We all know that if you've got a head teacher or a senior leadership team that engage and value being active, they will be more likely to have a physical activity policy. They will be more likely to spend some funding on, developing those aspects. So that top down is also a challenge, because if you're a person who's got a senior leadership team that doesn't engage with those messages that you're trying to say, what are you going to do? It's like banging your head against a brick wall. So, how do we change that? So ultimately, the reason why I'm in this research and doing this research is because we need to change those people up there. We need government to value it. We need Ofsted to inspect on it. We need, physical activity policies to be mandatory. We need them to be asked about. So I don't know if you've heard of something called Watchstead. So it's something you can go on. It's like a cheeky little website, and you can search for terms or phrases that Ofsted have used in inspections. So you can put physical activity in there, or physical literacy, or whatever, whatever term or phrase you want to use. And it will tell you if it's been mentioned in Ofsted reports. So obviously I did a cheeky little look in primary school and to see, what percentage of physical was mentioned, physical activity. I did all the terms that I could think of that were relevant. Physical development, movement. Obviously, in comparison to some other key phrases, physical is not mentioned. So it's hardly, in over like 11,000 reports.
No.
Physical generally, just the word physical is 20%, but we're talking like 1% for P, 8%. So in 8% of Ofsted reports in primary schools, 8% physical education is mentioned.
Wow, that's shocking. You said that's called Watch, and there's a gem for anyone and everyone listening, and we'll have to make sure we get that put out there as well. 8%, that's shocking, really. And I suppose with these changes you're talking about, with the top down from government side, it's not going to be a click of the fingers.
Yeah.
It's going to take time, and it might be the fact that it takes a generation to really get that full change, in the sense of, if we start to instill things now,
head teachers are only going to respond if your Ofsted or your government say you have to do it. That's the reality. So if I know, Ofsted inspections is a bit contentious at the moment for a variety of reasons. However, they are the people that are informing what we are doing in school, or what outcomes we're doing and how we tell you things, because we're trying to get good inspection reports. And if physical education, physical activity, PL, if having a physical activity, so early year settings, for example, you have to have a nutrition policy, because if you give a child peanuts that's allergic to peanuts, they're going to die. The outcomes are horrendous. You do not have to have a physical activity policy. However, if Ofsted started saying, we need to have a physical activity policy, show me a physical activity policy, they'd have to have one. They'd have to engage in it. They'd have to do it. So those challenges and barriers are at the top. But then there's no denying that if you're a PE teacher listening to this, who does an absolutely outstanding job doing what you do with your class of pupils, we need to talk about it more. We need to share it. We need to, get it out there in the community. We need to engage with parents. One thing that I don't get enough of as a parent is hearing about the physical activity in this. I'll constantly get, this is the story your class are reading today or this week, or acting out, or these are the things we're working on. But I very rarely get, PE or physical development, and that's slightly different in primary school, obviously, because it's a lot more structured. There's a PE curriculum; it's built into the to the school day. But that's another challenge, that kind of connect with parents and the community, and how we could do that better, and how we could, how's that going to influence and impact the journey of our young people being active?
Yeah. So So on that note of our listeners always like to pick up some gems. There's already been some already. We've been chatting about the research and delving into it and how that can make the larger change by implementing certain things. But what are some of maybe the quick wins that those working in a weak primary schools can implement that could have an impact? So you mentioned about SLT being powerful. So getting them on board is a fantastic thing. What else could those listening to this podcast think about that are easy wins they could do themselves? They don't have to get the whole staff on board, because I know that managing a complex change, which can take long. Have you got any little quick wins that you've seen while you've been in schools and doing this research?
A thing that you could just put on other people and say, here, have a look through these physical literacy glasses, and you'll see things in a different way. Because I think a quick win, if you don't already do so, would be to put your PL glasses on and start integrating the think, feel, move and connect principles that comes with PL, whether it's delivery of PE, because it will actually inform your delivery more than what you might expect it to. Because if you think about outcomes, about how they're, how are they motivated in that PE session you're doing? Have you asked them after the session, do you ask them how they feel, how they felt during that activity? Have you got opportunities where there is choice in what they're doing? So aside from the fact you might be delivering, I don't know, a football or a rugby or a specific session that you're delivering for that 45 minutes of an hour, have you put elements of choice in that session? So for girls who might feel intimidated by certain activities, if you've got 10 activities, 10 stations to do, tell them they've got to choose 6 of them. So you're automatically putting that choice in there. You're allowing them to connect with what they're doing, other than just telling them what they're doing. You're allowing them to connect. You're allowing them to have that choice. And then the engagement with, the questions of how they felt during that session is as important to observe what they're feeling. If they're not enjoying something that you're doing, what do? You just carry on, because you're delivering a football session that day. Do you carry on what you do? How can you mix it up? And how can you? So I think put those glasses on if you can, and share those glasses.
So that can that can come down to the planning assessment, basically, not assessment of quality of how the children are performed, but planning the session, assessing the session based on feedback from the children. And this sometimes talked about quite a lot with regards to English and maths, but it's building that relationship between the child and the subject. So obviously we're talking about PE here, and if we put, I know it's not a curriculum subject, but if we put physical literacy or physical activity in our mindset as this is a subject, this is something for a child to build a relationship with. If we use, like you're saying, that mindset of, okay, when we're planning our sessions and asking the children about the sessions, my main focus is, as well as developing the skills we need to develop, my main focus is developing the relationship between my child and physical activity. Would you say that's it?
Like I say, that population we're working with isn't the same population that was, people are always harping on, we're not as active and outdoors. When I was at primary school, I grew up in a rural village just outside of Cambridge. My house backed onto a farmer's field. I lived opposite like a small woodland. So I'd just be lost browsing the woods, climbing trees, making mud pies, getting lost in the ditches. Right, those are my main memories of being active at a primary school age, to be honest. And I think if we're not getting that the way we should, then obviously you're going to have factors like individual temperament, individual preferences. Some children are going to exhibit a natural inclination towards being active. You get the ones, the ones that are always picked for the school sports teams, that always go to the, the local or district competitions. You'll always get that. I was one of those, I'd go to whether it was hockey, netball, whatever. It's just those same 8 children that go to all the sessions.
Yeah.
So you're going to get those ones that have got the natural enthusiasm, the natural skill for engaging in sport and PE. But I think if we need to reframe that and again reinforce that every child, regardless of their natural, regardless of their home experience or the cultural experiences, how can we support and encourage an environment that will be child-led and allow for a variety of movement experience that will foster each person's relationship with movement? So I think it's just, I think it's just reframing that from sport as competition. Don't get me wrong. I was a middle distance athlete. I'm probably one of the most competitive people you've met. I can't ever let my husband beat me at anything. Well, I failed. But I completely understand. I was a school sport competition manager for a time in Derbyshire. I completely understand that competition is integral. But equally, we've got a responsibility in PE and for a movement as a whole with our young people to ensure that we move every child up a bit. And there's that interesting thing that we look at, which is done in a lot of areas of life, which is the closing the gap thing. So that's done in we need to close the gap between people that are, poor people and rich people. We need to close all these gaps. But actually, I would look at it as, I'd rather look at it, we've got to move people up a bit more from where they are. So, we're not going to get little Bobby to little Jimmy at that point in the year you've got with them in a year group you've got, but you've got to get little Bobby up here and you've still got to get little Jimmy up here. So it's a real challenge. PE, is a real challenge. There's a huge disparity as well in abilities. So if you took at early years, for example, a class of 4 and 5-year-olds, there's a huge difference in what some of them might not be able to use balance bikes yet, whereas others, it's a hard job, the listeners do and you guys do. And I admire and respect you who go in every day and do your best to deliver PE. So I think from a quick win perspective, my passion is about that holistic view of the individual and child-led approach and how those PL glasses can just help, not just in delivering PE, but how kind of our job as advocates, just keep, like I say, I will keep prodding at my little one's primary school until, I will keep offering, I will keep, even though, no, phonics is a 45-minute session, we follow a scheme. There's no room for movement in it. It's like, well, why are you following that scheme then? So you're telling me that my child is sat down 45 minutes in that session, surely because that's the phonics program you've chosen. So it's questioning. More of us that do better. The more banging of the drum we do.
And that comes back to actually looking at how physical movement, for what I'm about phrase to make it all encompassing, can actually benefit learning. If there's physical movement, continuous learning going on, that is focusing on phonics, then it's a case, again, it doesn't have to be a scheme, but it's a case of, okay, this is a scheme for guidance, but we as a school are going to ensure that we've got our P&L physical literacy glasses on, and we're thinking about, okay, how can we achieve these outcomes? Because outcomes we need to achieve, there's no getting wrong there. All what the children develop in this area, their phonics skills, but let's ensure there's, a physical curriculum going on behind.
If you haven't got a physical activity policy that goes beyond PE, then how can you add an extra column to your planning? How can you encourage or support other subject leaders to add a physical activity column to their session plans? To appreciate that, we don't want our young people sitting on their bums for 45 minutes, 60 minutes at a term. Appreciate the fact that only 10 minutes of movement is required to stimulate both cognitively and, physiologically. So we're talking about having, move for, even if it's at the start, midway, even things like transition time between lessons. How can you make those more active? But there's a primary school I was talking to and I was saying, what about making your transition times more active? Oh, no, we can't do that. Why not? Well, we've never done that. Okay. Well, doesn't mean we can't start because we need to make those steps to get our young people more active, because honestly, the repercussions in the future will be huge. So we've got to start somewhere. And, to me, it's like, okay, the early years and the primary school ages are such an integral part of a young person's mind.
Yeah, absolutely. We did, I might have mentioned it before on previous podcast, obviously, podcast landed in Slip. But we did a study with under the Ellen Smith team at Leeds University. We used the Mass on the Move program as the basis for the study, but basically looking at getting physical activity into curriculum time, and making sure it's not detrimental to the learning of the core subjects, should we say, maths, English, as you know. And the study focus on two things. One was the amount of activity that pupils did throughout the day, and throughout that session, but also then the impact on their attainment in that subject as well. And I won't go into the whole study because it's out there, it's published, people can see it, but needless to say, the activity levels through those sessions and across the day increased, as well as the average attainment levels increased as well. And there was a control group who didn't take part in the activity that went through the same maths assessments, went through their standard math sessions, and then there was a participating group of children across multiple schools that did the physically active learning side of things. And we knew what the impact was going to be, but we wanted to highlight that. So I think the study that you're doing, the study we did with Leeds Beckett University, there needs to be more of this. And I think it needs to be more attention paid to it, in the sense that it doesn't necessarily have to be a scheme. But like you were saying, if we can just get the move in for a bit, if we can get the cognitives firing a bit more, the impact is there. Yeah. The evidence is there. The attainment doesn't drop.
Or indeed, all of you lovely people that work with young people, and you've seen the joy, the fun, the confidence, what movement. I mean, there's a song, if you haven't heard it, if you've got an Alexa, play Hungry Hippo. And honestly, I play that every morning before my child goes to school. Everyone's Alexa's going to be play Hungry Hippo. It is amazing. But the joy that it gets, I think it makes you realise as an adult, right, we're never too old to play. The funniest thing a young person said to me when I was living was, "But you're a grown-up. Yes, I'm a grown-up. Grown-up is still allowed to play." And I think we need more of that playfulness and role modelling in in what we're doing, which is it's just as important as what we do. I wasn't doing anything structured. I was just doing, we were just messing about. But it's just our role in that, and competing against all the stuff PE teachers and people have to do. And I think it's bigger than PE teachers. It's the training for the head teachers. It's that lovely research that you just mentioned. The whole active school principles and how we're leading on those things, and how we need to teach those people. It's just banging the drum. So the more of us that can do that and keep sharing those key messages, be advocates for it, and challenge those things when we see it. I still see 5-year-olds being pushed to school in trikes. I see, I'm on holiday in Tenerife with the sea and the mountains in the background, and there's children being pushed in buggies with a tablet in front of them, and it bewilders me. And it's a challenge. That's sedentary, but screen time is not the enemy. It's the sedentary nature of screen time. So there's things we can do. So if you have screen time in your class, I don't know if you're going to do a YouTube movement session, try things like turning the screen off and just having the audio. Try things like, if you're going to do work that are on tablets, have the tablets, on a high platform so that the children are standing up, not sitting down. So it's just those things, small, as we said, those small steps that can, and a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of those. And I think it's important for us to do what we can to pass those messages on to the parents and everything, and that connect with everything. But the job PE teachers do is so important. And I think that reframing it with those PL glasses will help. It's not, it's not the answer. There's no golden bullet that's going to make all our children, active. However, currently it's going to be the most inactive generation there's ever been. And
like you said, it's combating that, and it's there's the community, it's the community, the families. It's everyone getting on board with the message, and to do that, it's going to take a lot of time. There's lots of our listeners, this podcast for a reason, because they're already passionate about it, or they're already looking at trying to implement these things. You mentioned about the tablet being on a higher level, and the craze at the moment is standing desks. Ironically, neither of us on the standing desk right now. We're recording this. We've got them in the offices. They say, well, if we're doing that for us, are we doing those sorts of things for the children in the school? And with our listeners doing what they can, what do you believe they need? What more support do you think school PE leads and teachers need in order to implement this?
Action without money, which is a challenge. So obviously one of those things is professional development. So more opportunity time for training for educators, for senior leadership teams about inclusive PE strategies, about the latest research, about, approaches, about outcomes. The other thing is we need help. So the Sport England have obviously got their Uniting the Nation strategy, which is starting to have the touch points with how important it is for all stakeholders or partnerships. So I think we need supporting the community and engaging parents and engaging community in supporting our school physical activity related programs. We need to carry on trying even if it fails. So my school did a wakey shaky in the morning. So the first week, 5 parents turned up. The second week, 3 parents turned up. By week 4, there was only me turning up, and they were like, "Oh, I think we'll stop it for now." And it was like, okay, how hard did you try? It went out on the out once. I said, let's just go around and grab all the people who are standing there. I kid you not, queuing for 10 minutes outside the classroom with their mittens. We need to go around and grab them. We need to, it's hard, but we just need to keep trying. So we need support from senior leadership to empower people to carry on doing that and not feel like they shouldn't do that. I think to help us also with the data-driven approach, I'm really embedded in the research. To me, knowledge is power, and I think we cannot change what we do not know. There's an incorrect assumption that our little people are moving enough. There's not a parent I've kind of spoken to or an early years practitioner. They all say, I think they're getting enough activity. Evidence tells us they're not. So what's the problem there? There's a disparity. They're not being active enough, but we're not accepting that. And it's almost like being an alcoholic. You have to see that there's a problem there. And it's hard because it's against an ego. It's against the ego of a PE teacher or a head teacher or an early years teacher to go, okay, maybe we aren't getting enough movement. Because it's their job, it's their life. Everyone does such a fantastic job. However, if we can't acknowledge there's a problem, therefore data can help us do that. So if there's any schools or PE teachers listening that go, okay, it might be really important if Natalie came into my school and we did some physical activity measurement of all our young people, we did some physical literacy benchmarking. So I could then say to my head teacher, look, the boys are moving 50% more than the girls. Why is this? What can we do? How can we change the reasons we put out at lunchtime to change that? It might show that all the children are being far more inactive in the afternoons. What lessons have you gotten in the afternoons? What teachers can we then be talking to say, look, they're all being inactive in the afternoons. Data is power. So if there's anyone listening that thinks, that kind of data might be really useful in 2024, my research will be doing that. We'll be measuring, we'll be benchmarking. So please do reach out and get in touch if that sounds of interest or you want to hear more. Because honestly, I think that is that data-driven approach, being able to assess, benchmark, PL, away from just what we currently do, especially in the early years, which is very much motor skill development, tick, tick, tick. If they're doing all those things, they're green lighted. There's no problem. However, there's no objective assessment of actually how active they're being, either. So I think that would be helpful. That data is power.
That's and that's like trying to get SLT on board. We do say that phrase quite a few times, and I am aware that there's lots of SLTs who are on board with this message. And I've been to quite a lot of schools across the West Midlands where it's being driven, it's starting to be driven. Now, it's not always stemmed from one person, but it's got to start somewhere. And it is growing. So there are lots out there. But if you are facing a situation where you're implementing what is a complex change throughout your school, it's a case of not just introducing, this is the idea, it's introducing why. Why are we doing this? Why are we even looking at it? What's the problem? And why are we trying to do things this way? Because what we're aiming to achieve. And it goes back to that. I don't know if anyone haven't kept the with them. What's in it for me? At the end of the day, what's in it for you? And people are in education because they want to make that impact. And what's in it for you is it's going to hurt. a bigger impact. If you really want to make a bigger impact on these children's lives, not just now, but when they've gone on from yourself, this is what's going to do that. This is going to have the longevity. So I'd say you're exactly right. You use that data, look at how you can get that data.
It's exactly what you said, Dad. It's that lifeline. One of the researchers as well asked the question about where physical literacy should sit. Because really what we don't want to do is just dump it in the PE box. Let's dump everything to do with sport or being active in the poor PE box for that poor PE lead. But over 50% of kind of respondents chose that it was an overarching concept. So kind of should be a life curriculum approach. So it's not limited to a single development area. It shouldn't be limited to just PE, whilst obviously the huge important role PE leads and PE teachers have in that. It can't all be on those individuals within the school to do that. So support for our lovely PE teachers, more support, more training, more, we can't all go and knock on the door of number 10, but, it's how we're using what we've got to help lobby for those messages, in amongst all the other hard work that our lovely teachers.
Yeah. And I think that's nailed on the head with the amount of hard work that's going on. I think it's been mentioned before, but again, I think it's so important that PE in school, there's PE school, sport, physical activity, and then you're looking at physical development, you're looking at, physical literacy as well. It's a case of the only thing there that is curriculum focused is PE, because that's part of the curriculum. The rest of it is a case, and what a lot of people are pushing for now is there is a subject lead for PE. However, there is also then a physical activity lead who takes on school sports competitions, what physical activity is going in the school, what physical movement, how embedded physical movement is in the school day. So you've got two people there, one focused on the curriculum, the quality, the standards, the expectations, so on and so on, and teaching the outcomes.
Like you just said about your own personal example of how you're taking year one and you're trying to do more of a free flow early years approach. Because the early years, there's been programs developed such as physical activity nutrition coordinator roles by Linda Aston Pitt. There's programs in Manchester where they've got physical development champions, and I think that is really important, and I think is something to think about. So whilst early years has its own challenges, there's a lot that can maybe be taken about some of the successes in early years that can move up and should move up into primary school. And I think that's why I thought it was important to get data on the earlier, because if we can evidence how that methodology of teaching works because it gets them more active, it improves their chances of, being physically literate at that point in time, then those could be really important messages going up the ages, especially as you said about, challenging that fact that they need to be sat still at the front learning. And I think one of the things I want to lastly comment, and I guess as we're wrapping up, is the fact that when my young person comes home with a sticker for sitting still and tells me she got told off for running. Now, I'm sure she was probably running in an inappropriate time and she deserved being told off, but it's just those messages that it reinforces that running is bad, sitting still and learning is good. It's not. A child that can't sit still is told that that's naughty behaviour. They shouldn't be doing that. You've got to sit still and listen. So they're made to feel that their inability to sit still is an issue, but we shouldn't. Those messages are negative. They're really just not good. So I think, that there's a point in the middle where we need to meet between learning and academic outcomes and integrating movement, and certainly more to be done, learnt and and done. So
it needs to be trials, doesn't it? It needs to be testings. You need the in-depth sort of thing, but there's also, it's next step for schools to do this themselves and give things a go. It doesn't have to be a whole curriculum change or approach change. It's okay, let me try an little bit in this and see how it goes specifically in this. And if there's success there, let's try and measure that success. And think, well, okay, let's see if it corresponds to if we try it in this as well. That's a completely different topic or way of learning than we're used to. But I mean, we've, through this, like you said, to nicely wrap things up with I think there's been some absolute gems of tips and ideas and things that people can do. But short and sharp, to finish things off, can you round off 3 to 5 of those key things you think people can just take away with them right now and start looking at doing, implementing, and talking
Get your
about
PO
in
glass
their
on.
schools?
Challenge yourself to really observe how active your children are being, whether it's in your PE lessons. Challenge with staff that are delivering other lessons to think about it. Secondly, don't keep quiet on the topic. Don't ever keep quiet. Just keep going. And then thirdly, if you're thinking, oh, Natalie's a researcher, she just sits getting data. What does she know about what I'm actually like? Well, I've spent kind of many years delivering sessions directly to children, to young people. And it's been all about that positive first experience. You guys are the gatekeepers to the beautiful world of having physically healthy lives for our young people. And those positive experiences you're instilling in that age are fantastic. So keep doing what you're doing, but don't be afraid to challenge yourself with that PL lens. Think about outside of just movement, how we think, connect and feel with our movement, how we nurture that relationship, both yourself and the young people, also how you can transport those key messages to others.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Natalie. It's been really interesting to hear about your research. Couple of things there that I'm going to take away with myself. One of them is what Watch said. I'm going to have a little look into that one as well. Have a little snoop on that one. So thank you for that one. There we go. Last thing. I'll get up and get moving. Thanks, Natalie. And for everyone listening, if you did want to reach out with Natalie, we'll be sharing her social links with you guys as well. And like Natalie said, if you want to just have a conversation with her, go to a school, see what you can do, please do reach out, make the most of our expertise, and continue having that impact. So thanks again, Natalie, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks for listening. Join us next time for the Primary PE Huddle podcast, and remember to subscribe wherever you access your pods so you don't miss an episode and the key gems our fantastic guests share for you. You can connect with us on Twitter or X at Aspire Sports UK and find out more about us and the family at www.aaeg.co.uk and www.aspire-ed.co.uk for PE CPD related courses and more content. Hope to see you there, and thanks for listening.